Welcome, my name is Kim Edgar and I'm a consultant at NetSpot. Today we're going to have a look at what's new in Moodle 2.4. Moodle 2.4 was released on the 3rd of December in 2012 in line with Moodle's 6-monthly release cycle. You can find out more information about this release at Moodle Docs Release Notes. There's also a list of minimum requirements, which are the same as for Moodle 2.3. And there's a long list of improvements, some of which we'll have a look at practically today, and some that I'll mention quickly in this presentation. There are lots of minor highlights as well, which we'll have a look at a lot of the ones that will affect end users. And one of the big improvements in Moodle 2.4 is the performance improvements. And there's lots of discussion on the internet about the performance improvements, and there's some charts and graphs in the release notes that will give you an indication of where the improvements have been made. In addition to performance improvements, there are other major improvements within Moodle which are difficult to demonstrate but are worth mentioning. Again, I would recommend looking at Moodle Docs 2.4 release notes to get full details about these. Moodle allows plugin updating within Moodle, so within the web interface now. In 2.3 we were notified of new versions of a plugin being available. In 2.4 you can now update those plugins via the web interface. You must have server access, so if you're self-hosting you'll be able to do this from within Moodle. The Course Formats plugin has been reworked to support pluggable course formats with more flexibility. Moodle is hoping that the Moodle community will start to contribute some new and exciting course formats which take advantage of this new feature. Themes have also been reconfigured to take into account HTML5, improved compatibility with Internet Explorer 8 to 10, and a range of other back-end improvements. There's also a range of enrolment-related improvements, including cohorts being synchronized to course groups, a reworked support for enrolment restore, fully implemented manual, self, cohort and database plugins, as well as a range of other improvements. Moodle 2.4 also now supports full Unicode file names in zip archives. So there's a range of back-end improvements which generally improve Moodle's performance and functionality. What we're going to do now though is to log into Moodle 2.4 and have a look at some of the things that affect our front-end experience. I'm now logged in to my Moodle 2.4 local environment. I'm a site administrator in this environment, which will allow us to see some features that site admins can control, as well as some new features for teachers. We're currently looking at my Moodle page, and you can see that there are a list of courses, and under the list of courses, a couple of new icons. So rather than all of the assignments and actionable activities listed immediately, they're listed in a collapsed form. And when we click on the icons, we can see those items which need attention, or in the case of forum posts, we can see which forums contain new posts. I'm just going to scroll back up to the top of the page and click on Customize this page. Each participant can also restrict the number of courses which are listed on that page. We can list Always Show All Courses, which is the default, or we can restrict it to a certain number of courses. You can see that Moodle shows you that there are three hidden courses in this case. I'm going to change mine back to Always Show All. I'm going to enter one of my courses so we can have a look at some of the new course features. The first thing that you'll notice is the larger, more colourful icon set. This is the default icon set, and you'll also notice changes to the editing icons. The icons not only look prettier, but they are SVG format and support full scaling on all devices, so they'll always look good. Let's have a look at some of the new features in the assignment module. I'm going to scroll down and go to add an activity or resource. I'm going to click on assignment and then add. I've populated the basics by adding an assignment name and a description, and I'm going to scroll down to show you some of the new features in assignments in Moodle 2.4. You may know that in Moodle 2.3 the assignment module was completely redeveloped to include all of the assignment subtypes in the one assignment tool. In Moodle 2.4, there's been some additional features which improve group assignments, allow blind marking, have submission date extensions, allow the students to accept a submission statement, and also improved support for offline marking. So you'll notice in the assignment settings section that we have an additional cut-off date. This allows you to provide a grace period for the submission of assignments. You'll also notice that we have required that students accept a submission statement, which means that when the student submits their assignment, they'll be asked to agree to a predefined submission statement. This typically has some kind of statement that asserts that the student's work is their own original work. To create a custom submission statement, your site administrator will set that up through the site administration. You'll also notice that we have got a range of items related to groups. So we have students submitting groups, require all group members to submit groupings for student groups. So that's how you can set up a group assignment. The features of the assignment module are quite extensive, and I will create an additional recording to show those in more detail. Lastly, we see blind marking, and blind marking will show the markers a list of participant numbers rather than the participant names. The participant numbers are not equal to anything related to the student profile. For example, they are not related to the student ID, so the markers won't know the identity of the student. So they're the additional assignment 2.4 features. I'm going to scroll down and click on Save and Return to Course. Another item that is related to assessments and assignment creation is the advanced grading form display. I'm going to scroll down to an assignment that I know has an advanced grading form, which is this web quest assignment. So in Moodle 2.3, both rubrics and marking guides were supported. If you used rubrics and marking guides in previous versions, the students would have needed to locate the marking guide on the left-hand side, normally displayed below the assignment name. In Moodle 2.4, the assignment grading form is shown on the submission screen. So had I been logged in as a student, I would have seen this grading form immediately, and I can see the criteria and what points each criteria is worth, and then below the marking guide I would add my submission. So it makes it much clearer to students what they're being graded on. Scrolling back up to the top and back to the course homepage. One of my favourite Moodle features is conditional activities. Conditional activities was added in Moodle 2, and there have been improvements to the feature in several other versions, including the addition of adding the time, as well as being able to release an entire topic conditionally. In Moodle 2.4, restricting activities and resources based on the value in a user profile field has now been added. You'll notice that this activity, Moodle Docs, is restricted. It's not available unless a special program contains bright sparks. So special program is a custom user field, and bright sparks is one of the programs in that field. If we have a look at the settings for this resource, I'll scroll down to where the restriction happens. So in previous versions of Moodle, we've had the date and the time, the grade condition, and also activity completion condition, and before activity can be accessed, the setting, how that particular activity is going to look. What's been added in Moodle 2.4 is the user field. So you're able to specify any field in a user profile and a couple of different variations, so contains, doesn't contain, etc. for the operators, and then the text. So Moodle will restrict the access to this particular resource based on the user field special program and the text bright sparks. So only those people who have bright sparks will be able to see this activity. This could be used in conjunction with the other settings such as date and grade condition or activity completion, and all other things work as they did previously. I'm going to click on Save and Return to Course. Also related to conditional activities and course completion is the renaming of a feature in Moodle. I'm going to go down to my course administration and click on completion tracking. We can see that the area that used to be called course prerequisites is now called course dependencies. And in the case of this course, it is dependent on the course MBA marketing. That means that this marketing course has to be complete before the advanced grading course is considered to be complete. This isn't a change in functionality, but dependencies better describes the feature. I'm just going to scroll down again and click on Save Changes. An accessibility feature that I should mention is that the screen reader profile setting is no longer located in the user profile screen when you're setting up a new user. That's because all pages are now accessible by a screen reader, which is fantastic. Let's have a look at some of the settings outside of the course that have changed. In Moodle 2.4, they have added support for external calendars. I'm going to click on Site Pages and then click on Calendar to show you where this is set up. I have already set up a Google Calendar for my Moodle events, and you can see that there are a couple of events here with different background colours. The two events on the 20th and the 21st are events coming from my Google Calendar, and the one set up on the 31st is coming from my internal Moodle calendar. The way that I set that up was to go to Manage Subscriptions and then give my calendar a name. You can name it whatever you like. And then I went to my Google Calendar and got the calendar URL. So depending on what type of external calendar you're wanting to bring in, you can get either an ICS format or an XML format. And once you've got the correct URL, if you click on Add, it will automatically add that calendar to your Moodle site. There are also some changes in site administration that are worth having a look at. First of all, under Site Administration, Courses, Backup, and Automated Backup Setup, there are a number of settings which enable us to skip some courses in our backups. If I scroll down, you'll see that there is the ability to skip hidden courses, skip courses not modified in a certain number of days, and skip courses not modified since previous backup. There's also some changes to the TinyMCE editor. You might know that the TinyMCE editor is the editor that you see when you're in any screen which allows you to create and modify text. So I'm going to go back into the course just to have a look at what the TinyMCE editor looks like at the moment. So I've gone to the site home and back into our advanced grading course. I could go into any item or add an item which allows me to add or modify text. But I'm going to have a look at the URL description because that'll show us the TinyMCE editor. You'll see this editor appears at the top of the screen here and it has 3 toolbars. I have already customized this toolbar by adding a horizontal line and also the anchor tool. One of the things that you might want to do is reduce the number of tools that are shown here so that there are only 2 lines of toolbars. And you could identify some of the tools that you might not use very often. So for example, some of these specialized tools such as symbols and special characters can be removed if your participants or your teachers are not using them. I'm going to skip back into my site administration, and I could navigate to this item by going through site administration and locating the text editor screen. But what I'm going to do instead is type in a keyword, so TinyMCE, and locate the feature that way. So the administration search will bring up any of the options which include the TinyMCE keyword, and you can see the first result, for example, is under Manage Editors, and if I wanted to see what else was in that screen I could click on that heading. I'm actually looking for the setting which allows us to change the toolbar, so I'm just scrolling down. You can see here that there is a list of features, and these features are the things that appear on the TinyMCE editor. You'll also notice that there is a default list, so this is what is normally displayed on the toolbar for the TinyMCE. You'll also notice these little vertical lines. Those vertical lines are where the tools are separated into groups, so you can add those yourself as well. Moodle has also provided a link to the buttons and controls that are available within that editor. So if we were to follow that link, I've already loaded it in another window, we would see a big long list of the tools in the editor and what they are called. So for example, you can see things like anchor is listed and you're able to add that to the toolbar or remove other tools from the toolbar. That's where you get the names from. Just popping back into my Moodle site. Again, you can see here that I have got the horizontal rule and the anchor added. I could remove those to go back to the standard toolbar. I might also decide that I don't want my users using underline, so I can remove underline from the list. And perhaps superscript and subscript also are not used very often, and I can remove those from the list. I might also decide to remove a whole lot of tools from that third toolbar. So I'm going to leave table there and image, but I'm going to get rid of everything else. And maybe I'll get rid of the special codes at the end as well. When I click on Save Changes and navigate back to my course, I'm going to have a look at the same tool. And you'll see that the toolbar that we've created is a much shorter toolbar with the tools missing that I've removed. So it's quite a nice feature to be able to add and remove those tools, and I could move some of these tools up onto these other two lines and reduce the amount of space that the toolbar is taking up. If you did want to go back to the default toolset, you can just copy the default text from below the settings box and paste it back into the text area, and all of the tools will return. As always, Moodle.org is a great source for other resources, and you'll find both the release notes for Moodle 2.4 and the Moodle Docs documentation for Moodle 2.4, very useful resources for finding more out about how Moodle works and how to really get into the nitty-gritty of those new features. Thank you for watching. I hope you've learned something about Moodle 2.4.